Good afternoon again. Hello, can everyone please take your seats? We're going to get our program started. Thank you again for being here today. As you might or might not know, we had record registration for this alumni weekend, 623 people. Thank you. Signed up to be here. I think we've had amazing programming, including the Dean's panel discussion earlier about President Trump and the press. We have a very full program for you where we're going to talk about some amazing graduates. But first, we're going to start with Dean Steve Cole, who has a few remarks to make. So please welcome Dean Steve Cole.
Thank you, Maria. And today is indeed about celebration of some of the great colleagues and alumni among us. But I wanted also to start with some reflection. It's great to see you back here. Welcome back. And I wanted to tell you, first of all, that this is a time of enormous energy and commitment at your school for reasons that I think you can well imagine. It's a privilege for me to support our students and faculty and to contribute to our profession at a time when journalism is really under attack. And I wanted to stop and reflect just for a few minutes about the truth that journalism really is under serious threat today, not just in this country, but worldwide. And I have not seen anything like it in my professional lifetime. So I'd just like to name a couple of the threats that we face and talk just a little bit about our response to them. The 2016 election campaign and the policies of the Trump administration have presented startling departures in political rhetoric, propaganda campaigns, and of course in the relationship between the press and the presidency, as we were reflecting on this morning. I don't have time to address all of those challenges, but I thought I would talk about two. One concerns the president's words, and the other concerns the law. So, as some of you will recall, one of the features of a Columbia Journalism School education is learning how to be yelled at. I think as a reporter, if you're doing your job properly, you can expect to be called names, and even by the President of the United States. And of course, none of us should be dismayed or cowed about such attacks. And from day to day, we know that our mission is to get right back to doing our job, reporting hard, reporting fairly on all those who exercise power in our government and in our economy. Yet when President Trump refers publicly to journalists as enemies of the people and repeatedly calls them dishonest, dishonorable, he's crossing a line that is really new territory for any American president since the Second World War. And I think with such language, the president is, evidently seeking to delegitimize the place of an independent professional press in our constitutional system for the purpose of weakening it. And I think we have to recognize this and resist it as best we can. This is not a matter of partisan politics or electoral politics. It concerns specific threats to free speech and journalism under the First Amendment. And that should galvanize all of us in this profession, whether we're working at big news organizations or at small opinion journals on the right or on the left. Some of you came to Columbia from countries where journalism has never been safe or free. And one reason a president's words matter is that they influence the behavior of authoritarians and dictators abroad, with sometimes fatal consequences. America's place in the world has long been informed by ideas and above all, the ideals of freedom and due process enshrined in the Bill of Rights. And so when our leaders seek to delegitimize those rights in the United States, they inevitably encourage those who have never honored or governed by them in the first place. Last year, 259 journalists were imprisoned worldwide, a record, and 48 reporters were killed. In other fields of civil society last year, some 260 human rights defenders were killed while doing their work. So we have to be clear, these are darkening times. Here at home, the more immediate threat concerns the rights of journalists under the law. So it's important to remember, I think, that the libel laws and court decisions under the First Amendment that shaped the independence many of us have enjoyed during our professional careers are relatively recent in American constitutional history. They really date to the 1960s with the Sullivan decision and the Pentagon Papers decision. Now, fortunately for now, it's not within the direct power of any American president to rewrite libel laws or to withdraw the rights of journalists to protect confidential sources. These are mostly matters of state law and Supreme Court jurisprudence. However, there is an area of presidential power that I think we should be concerned about immediately and watchful about in the short run. During the Obama administration, the Justice Department came close to criminalizing journalism by seeming in at least a few national security cases to describe reporters who obtain classified information as co-conspirators in federal crimes, including espionage. The Justice Department backed off of this trend that was emerging out of the National Security Division, but they did establish some theories of prosecution that are not very far from criminalizing the reporter's role. You know, I actually expect this Justice Department to file a case of this type against a journalist during the next few years. It may be brought against a relatively controversial organization like WikiLeaks, or it might be brought against a more traditional reporter. But for the interests of free journalism, it hardly matters who the defendant is, because bad law for one is bad law for all. I also think it's not Thank you. I think it's not a coincidence that these assaults on the First Amendment are taking place at a time when commercial journalism institutions are weaker than they've been since the Second World War, particularly obviously in the newspaper industry. You know, it's really been 2 running decades now that our profession has endured a loss of economic strength and independence. And that brings us back to an institution like your school, Columbia Journalism School, where I'm happy to say the news is brighter. Our school is economically strong, it's led by bold faculty, and we're really determined to play our part. And we're strengthened even more by the thousands of our alumni who are connected to the school, continue to be involved, and turn up in record numbers on occasions like this. We're inspired by you, your work in professional newsrooms, your ideas, and your continuing passion for the values that you studied here and for the ideals of independent professional and public interest reporting. You know, at Columbia, many of you know, we're fortunate to have a First Amendment lawyer who runs the university, President Lee Bollinger. This year, the journalism school joined the law school to help President Bollinger launch the Knight First Amendment Institute at Columbia. Its first director, Jamil Jaffer, came here from the American Civil Liberties Union. Late last month, the Institute filed its first lawsuit against the federal government concerning the searches of this suit concerns the searches of smartphones and laptops at borders, which is something that our students have been understandably very anxious about, and every working journalist has to be aware of these days. In our corner over at Pulitzer Hall, we're expanding our investigative reporting projects carried out by teams of faculty, professional reporters, and students. We think that one of the important ways to defend journalism is to practice and contribute bold, independent journalism. And we run projects in partnership with major media organizations like the Los Angeles Times, Slate, the New Yorker, ABC News. And we've also seen a revival of the Columbia Journalism Review's visibility and influence. There's a new editor and publisher, Kyle Pope, came to us most recently from a group of hyper-local weeklies on the Upper West Side, but had a long career at the Wall Street Journal, fine journalist. And he's been covering very vigorously the administration's battles with the press, and their audience has just exploded in their new kind of digital-first format, special print issues. It's a membership organization now, so please go home and become a member, www.cjr.org. And of course, we continue to educate the finest young journalists in the country and in the world. And the main change in our curriculum this year, you might be interested in, it was the addition of a 7-week required course in investigative reporting techniques for all MS students. So this winter we saw applications to our main degree program rise by about 10%, and I'm sure many of you who are still working in newsrooms have had a similar experience of resilience and a revived sense of mission. These are examples of how these recent attacks on the press have actually also strengthened the press. And I take heart from that, but I also think we're entering a long struggle. This is a departure, not just in this country, but around the world, that is not going to pass quickly. So when I see all of you here and I hear you speak about your work and your passion for our field, journalism, and its ideas, I'm really greatly encouraged. And I'm just proud to stand with you, our faculty, and our students in defense of a courageous, diverse, independent, free press. Thank you. And now back to the fun, the business of reunions, celebrations and reunions. And I'd like to welcome a remarkable pair of colleagues from the class of 1952, Eve Meyer, and from the class of 2012, Jake Heller.
Here we are, the class of 52. There were 6 of us at the table. There should have been 7. One from Tennessee isn't here, stairs and a broken ankle. We're here with our canes, with laryngitis, with organs that are missing, with recent surgery, with a number of more annoyances. But don't you define us by that, because we, among us, have the first woman at the copy desk of the New York Times, on almost every copy desk. A woman who was foremost in pushing the Times to treat women equally, who was president of the New York Guild, the Newspaper Guild of New York, sorry, and many, many, many other honors. We have a former president of the Alumni Association among our 6. We have 2 people who for many years worked on the Alumni Executive Committee. We have 2 winners at the table of the Journalism Award. We have an elegant, wonderful, dear nag who nagged several administrations to put the name of Pulitzer on this building where it belongs. We have an esteemed and honored university professor of journalism. No, 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 no. It's Gordon. No. Well, Ralph just stood. Ralph was the dean of the College of Journalism for the University of Florida. He brought the college into the digital age. He created the NPR station and put it, the radio station, and put it into his building. We have 2 winners of Columbia University medals, one of whom, at that time, was the first woman in 72 years from the journalism school. We have a woman honored 2 years ago with the Founders Award. Have I covered us all? I think that I can keep going. This is just 6 of us. But I don't have the time. What we have in common, and incidentally, the oldest member of the class, not of our class, the class before us, is with us, married to one of our own, the editor and author of the history of this college, also the founder of the Columbia Journalism Review. So don't define us by these things. What we have in common from the youngest to the oldest is that each one of us graduated from the single best school of its kind in the world.
Thank you very much. I'll keep it brief, and I won't go through the accolades of class of 2012 because they're not nearly as impressive yet. But I will say that it is a great honor to be here among such a distinguished group of enemies of the American people, as the dean said. And I was asked to just speak briefly about, as a recent graduate, what it means to have come from this place. And that's it, really. It was a joke, but that's it. This school doesn't only teach its students how to be good journalists, but it teaches us why we're journalists in the first place. And those high-minded ideals that the dean was speaking of, this place imbues or at least crystallizes in its graduating classes the reasons why we do what we do in the first place. And even as our profession is under attack, and even as the public discourse is corrupted by, we can call it a number of things, alternative facts, lies, fake news, but let's just call it what it really is, which is bullshit. This place, the Columbia Journalism School, is a bulwark against that. The Columbia Journalism School is a bulwark against bullshit, and I could not be more proud to be an alumni of a place where that is true, to be a part of this group, and I look forward to what all of us together can achieve in the years to come. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Karen Tulo. I'm the president of the Alumni Board, and I'm also with Bloomberg News. One of the highlights of the Alumni Weekend is the presentation of the Alumni Awards, which are given to recognize a distinguished career in journalism in any medium, for an outstanding single accomplishment in journalism, for noteworthy contributions to journalism education, or for the achievement in related fields. The first Alumni Award winner exemplifies how the values of the journalism school have remained constant over these many years. We may have different reporting tools and technologies at our disposal, but the work remains the same. Whether armed with a pen or a smartphone, we are driven to be accurate, fact-based, and accountable. If you're an editor, you lead with integrity and vision. James S. Tedman has done all of those things. You're going to be doing a lot of clapping, so you may want to rest. Graduating from the J School in 1967, yes, 50 years ago, he went on to work at Newsday. He spent the next 37 years there as a reporter, managing editor, the Washington bureau chief, and as an associate editor of Newsday and New York Newsday. During his time there, he shared in 3 Pulitzer Prizes, including the 1970 Pulitzer for Public Service. This was a series of articles investigating local officials who were rezoning land for personal gain. The articles led to criminal investigations, discharges and resignations of public and political office holders in the area. Jim is living proof that prize-winning journalism begins with the basics. His classmate, Howard Schneider, who is also a reporter at Newsday, remembers Jim in his early reporting years, and I quote, "What I still recall were the hallmarks of what made Jim an outstanding journalist for half a century: steadiness under pressure, excellent judgment, and the ability to get sources to talk to him, even under the most difficult circumstances." Currently, Jim is both a classroom lecturer and director of the Flagler College Forum on Government and Public Policy in St. Augustine, Florida. He considers it his mission to help train the next generation of journalists, and how lucky are they, and how lucky are we? For his commitment to journalism and for a lifetime of showing us how to get the story right, I'm proud to present, on behalf of all of us, the Alumni Award to James S. Tedman.
Fellow enemies, let me assure you in this era of fake news and alternative facts that I am the real Jim Tedman. I am truly delighted to be here, truly happy to receive this award, and grateful for the nomination and all the alternative facts and fakery that showed up in the nominating letters. I'm grateful first on behalf of the people that I've worked with and for during a long and fascinating adventure of a career that began in Ohio, swept through the eastern end of Long Island, went down to Washington, up to Boston, down to Baltimore, back to New York, down to Washington, with side trips to 3 continents. But it was at Columbia that all of this came together. Thank you, Columbia. Thank you, Journalism School. The first gift from Columbia was my wife, whom I met here. She's been my best supporter and also the most efficient teacher that anyone could imagine. Columbia also allowed me to immerse myself in New York City, launching a lifelong love affair with the greatest city in the world. Columbia also allowed me to get very angry. When I was editor of the Baltimore News American, it rests in peace, my mission each and every day was to get up and find a way to outwork, outsmart, and out-hustle the Baltimore Sun. Suddenly, the dean of the journalism school, Oz Elliott, joined the board of directors of the Baltimore Sun. I sent him a very angry letter accusing him of picking sides in a fight still being fought, and I declared that from that day forward I would never cross paths again with the Columbia University Graduate School of Journalism. So much for that. Columbia introduced me to a wonderful collection of classmates, workmates for many years, friends for life. We've worked together, played together, laughed together, and wept together. I remember swimming with Barry Jagoda in Americus, Georgia, sailing with Gurney Williams, trying to sail when the wind died in the middle of Long Island Sound with Jenny Chappell, yelling at Howie Schneider, arguing with Alan Sloan, and hiring Tawny Katz. I've had rich experiences eating pickled chicken feet with Michael Maidenberg, and I've also had the experience of editing Lenny Levitt and the treat of being edited by John Cotter, both classmates. And every night I had a chance to watch the handiwork of Tom Battag and Linda Winslow. We had a wonderful class, and we've done some wonderful things together. Let me talk briefly about three components of this award: achievement, distinguished, and lifetime. First, achievement. We've survived a time of great, great change. When we graduated, Fox News was still a decade away. Facebook was 4 decades away, and the internet was 3 computers sitting side by side in the basement of the computer, unable to talk to each other. Today, we live in a communications blizzard. 3 networks have grown to 187 TV networks. There are 1 billion websites and 3 million blogs each day, all generating an endless supply of propaganda, promotion, and their unique interpretation of facts. So what have we achieved? We've survived. We've survived utilizing the tools that were taught to us by Fred Friendly, Mel Mencher, John Hohenberg, Larry Pinkham, Don Shaner, Sam Lubell, names I hope that are familiar to all of you, lessons who are familiar to all of you. Columbia added an exclamation point to our enduring purpose, which is to expose wrongdoing, to identify the culprits, and hold them accountable, whoever and wherever they are. That this was all part of our daily mission to afflict the comfortable. Our achievements are a product of lessons learned from our first day in Morningside Heights. We live and die by the accuracy of our facts. There are no shortcuts. 2, distinguished. What's distinguished is not any single one of us, but the profession that we chose. This explosion of fake news and alternative facts in a post-truth world sends a clear message. The tools and mission of our chosen profession and our role in society as fact finder, fact checker, and fact teller have never been more important. This new world of cognitive dissonance, where everyone lives apart from each other, exposes what David Remnick calls the fragility of precious things. We mustn't forget this. Whether we're covering the news, teaching a new generation of journalists, or consuming the news, we must work harder than ever. In fact, we have a whole new challenge, and that is to teach our family, our friends, our neighbors, and the communities where we live that their obligations as citizens are to learn and utilize the very tools we fashioned. Check the sources, verify the claims, read beyond the headlines, seek alternative points of view. 3, lifetime. We've been given an extraordinary gift. In the past century, life expectancy has increased by 3 decades. We have been given the gift of extra time. What a unique opportunity. If you need help, check Paul Wilkes, another classmate, his newest book, The Next to Last Chapter. It's a wonderful guide to what you should be doing with the rest of your life. The great thing for all of us is that the next to last chapter is still being written. Know this, everyone here. This is not your final career. That's an exciting, if daunting, fact of the 21st century. The tools and principles, nonetheless, that helped us achieve great things in our particularly distinguished career today will be ever more important in the days and years and careers ahead. With the tools of our distinguished profession and a longer lifetime, we have much more to achieve. We've been given the gift of extra time. What will we do with it? Thanks so much.
Thank you, Jim. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our next Alumni Award winner, Matt Bai. Matt is an extraordinary political writer and columnist, one of the most distinguished voices in the field of this time. And he now writes the Political World column for Yahoo News. But he's been writing about politics for a long time and in a very distinguished and distinctive way. Before Yahoo, he was the chief political correspondent for the New York Times Magazine, where he covered 3 presidential campaigns. His most recent book is called All the Truth Is Out: The Week Politics Went Tabloid, which looked at the 1987 scandal involving presidential candidate Gary Hart and how it shaped political media for decades afterwards. You've probably seen him on Meet the Press and various other fora. But what you may know less about is his time at journalism school, which was really a remarkable set of achievements and contained a spirit that has animated him for a long time in the lives of other colleagues and journalists who just adore him and appreciate the way he is generous with others and with his time. So his master's project when he was here was about how the Yankees treated the community around their stadium in the Bronx. And it was published in New York Magazine, and it led to the resignation of a Yankee vice president who had referred to children playing in a nearby playground that the Yankees wanted to demolish as monkeys. And at the time, a professor of his at the time was named Robin Reisig, who's maybe here with us today. And let me quote what she had to say about him. Matt graduated as the top student in the class. That's always annoying, but he's managed to overcome it. The top student in his class, but that doesn't begin to describe his merits. He always helped others. As the Bronx Beat Borough Hall reporter, he constantly got quotes for classmates. As a Newsweek writer, he voluntarily stayed up late to help a new Columbia summer intern rewrite a story so it could get into the magazine. And good has brought a lot of good to him over his career. And one of the ways that he has risen into this moment is taking a long interest in the relationship between media and politics. Those of you who were there this morning listening to him have a taste of that. And so I thought I would conclude the introduction with a line from one of his recent columns. Gives you a sense of his voice. You can't treat presidential politics as a form of shallow entertainment and then claim to be shocked when a shallow entertainer wins the presidency. Please congratulate Matt Bai.
Thank you so much, Dean Call. I'm very moved by that introduction, and Karen and Maria. That is a really cool award. I hope United doesn't beat me up for trying to take it on the plane, but other than that, that's awesome. You know, this means a lot to me, and it means a lot to me because the Graduate School of Journalism means a lot to me, and played a big role in my life. I came here in 1993 for the least lofty of reasons, although I'm sure some of you will identify. I couldn't get a job, and the low point for me came in the newsroom of the Norwalk Hour, which was Connecticut's smallest daily newspaper, and I was pleading for the obituary writer's job, which had come open, and the editor said, the obituary writer's, I'm not sure that still exists, and the editor told me I was overqualified and he couldn't hire me, which I can assure you was the last time anyone ever said that to me in my career. And I came here, I was fortunate enough to get in, and I found Robin Reisig. Thank you, Robin. And Sandy Padway and Linnell Hancock and Judith Christ, who remains so much in my heart, and Roger Rosenblatt and the late Steve Isaacs, and they taught me to hold myself to a higher writing standard than whatever was the norm. But they also taught me how to listen when you ask people questions, which is the most underrated skill in journalism, and how to listen to that voice in my own head when it told me where the story was, no matter what anyone else thought, which is something I really still try to do. And every day when I would come to that school, the coffee sloshing in my hand and full of trepidation about what was awaiting me inside that day, I would stop, and for all the years after, when I come back here as first to see friends, and then as a guest speaker, and then for different events, and this morning, I would come and I would stop at that statue of Thomas Jefferson on the front steps and take a moment to remember, to be reminded that we are part of something larger, that this school, what we do is based on an idea. It's the idea that a free and informed society requires a free and vigilant press. This school is the keepsake for that idea. It's the place from which it emanates in the modern world. And as the dean said so eloquently in his remarks, we have been called upon lately, certainly in my part of the industry, to defend the value of that idea and the relevance of that idea. And I think and I hope that we've been prodded to look inside ourselves, to ask ourselves if we have upheld that idea in the way that previous generations have, and if our commitment is where it should be. To the extent that this means you all feel that I have honored that idea in my career and in my body of work, I can only tell you that I am really deeply grateful and very humbled, and I promise I will continue to try to honor that idea for as long as I can. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Our next winner is Erica Dilday, who came to Columbia to get not only a journalism degree, a graduate degree, but also an MBA. I don't know if we still do that, but she got both pretty much at the same time. Afterwards, she went to work for ABC, CBS, the New York Times, and worked in their business side, doing all sorts of great things there. But her little sister, Kay, said that Erica felt like doing something different, doing something that would use her broadcasting skills, her nonprofit skills, and Kay says that Erica is a producer. She likes organizing things. So eventually, Erica went to work for the Mays-Lease Documentary Center in Harlem, and now she's the executive director there. It was founded by legendary documentarian Albert Mays-Lease. I think I'm pronouncing that right, in 2005. His mission was to create a community center where people could walk in, watch documentaries, and to learn how to make documentaries. They could address social changes, social issues, they could be inspired to action, they could meet their neighbors and interact one-on-one with filmmakers and experts around issues of social importance. Erica joined MDC in 2001 and worked with Maisleys to make his radical idea succeed. In less than 5 years, she has built it into what Albert originally dreamed, a center that shows groundbreaking, powerful documentary films and teaches classes to anyone who comes through the doors. Today, the Pay What You Wish cinema draws 12,000 visitors a year, along with top filmmakers who speak about their films. Notably, the center premiered the largest opening of the Central Park Five, a discussion with the film's subjects. Since Erica joined their teen producers program, it has consistently produced graduates who are the first in their families to attend college, many pursuing film and media. Additionally, their films are now shown annually at the Tribeca Film Festival, something that our graduates are doing too, so competing against her. They won the Tribeca Youth Award for their film on gun violence and have partnered with Harlem Hospital and NYCHA facilities to use the film to educate youth about gun violence. Its Community Producers Program is the only documentary film education and professional development program in New York designed to teach court-involved youth from Harlem and the Bronx to make films that are teaching them self-empowerment and their role in the community. Albert Maisleys passed away in March of 2015, and Erica continues to fulfill his mission of making documentary films a powerful and accessible platform for everyone, and to ultimately inspire social action and change. So for her contributions to the journalism world in a nonprofit way and in a way that is truly changing communities, we're so proud to award this Alumni Award to Erica Dilday.
Thank you, everyone. I am so excited to be here, and I promise not to take more than my allotted 3 minutes. But I first want to shout out the crew from 1952. I had to add on my calculator twice to realize that this is your 65th reunion. I just want to give you guys a hand and thank you so much for all that you've done. And I hope one day to be sitting in that seat, probably with you guys, because I have a feeling you'll still be here. But thank you very much. So one of the things that I wanted to use this opportunity to do was to talk about how much of a home the journalism school was for me. When I got here as part of the class of 1993, I showed up having paid most of my tuition, not really sure how I was going to make it through. There were so many people here who became my mentors, who helped me do things I needed to do, who taught me things such as, being tenacious and not believing just everything you see, to question everything. And even today, I still hold up as my little sister who gave all of that information to Maria can tell you. Just last week, I held up an article from an important paper of note and said my RW1 teacher would have ripped this apart. So the lessons that I got here stay with me. I learned to be politically correct, but not too correct. I remember when one of my greatest mentors, Stephen Isaacs, was just there. Yes, we got to give him a hand. To help me every step of the way. And I just said to him, I don't know why you've taken such an interest in me, but I'm just so grateful. And he just looked at me and said, you don't know this because you grew up in Mississippi, but we blacks and Jews have to stick together. And he was just, he was just a great person and someone who really helped me find my way, and also just to not take things as they came and to, look at what you really wanted to do and why things really had to happen, and not to believe tradition and not to do something just because someone told you to. So I really appreciate the journalism school for, that type of mentorship. I don't think I've ever been in a program where I had that. And doing it at the same time I was doing at the business school, the juxtaposition of the two programs was amazing. You're right, Maria, they probably don't offer that anymore because it was a bad idea. It nearly killed me. But I have to say that I'm glad I did it, but it was the family, the friends, the group that I found here that really led me to want to do the things that I wanted to do, and that kept me focused on the idea of doing work and doing journalism for the purpose really of uncovering truth, of discovery, for inciting action, and not for chasing a dollar or for self-aggrandizement, because most of us didn't get it. But it was a great lesson. And you know, I have my niece and my daughter here today in the audience, and I'm hoping that at some point they'll be here and they'll do something along these lines. And I just want to, again, say how much it meant to me and how much I think it continues to mean to students. And the one thing, though, speaking of all of the fake news, and I promised myself no matter what I was not going to say a word that rhymes with rump, but I do want to make sure that we all stay aware and pay attention to the situation of incarceration, of minorities in this country, of people of different ethnicities and religions in this country. It's, as Michelle Alexander said, our new Jim Crow, our new slavery, and the greatest form of intimidation that's going on in this country right now. And we as journalists are the ones who have to stay vigilant and make sure that this doesn't go unnoticed. And with our community producers program at Maysles, I have so many students who are court involved for reasons that would never have existed if they had been middle-class, white, privileged people. And I see this every day, and I just want to make sure that you all know and remember and stay vigilant, because I think it's one of the greatest problems that we face today. Thank you.
We have two more award winners to honor, and it's really my pleasure to introduce the first. Robin McDowell, sitting in front of us, is an investigative reporter for the Associated Press and really one of the most distinguished investigative reporters in the country. She has a long list of awards, but I think if you'll take the time to look at some of her work, you'll see that she and her team are modeling a kind of public interest reporting at the highest level of completeness and achievement and creativity at a time when we really need those models. I'm teaching her latest investigation in the investigative reporting techniques class. I'm still finishing up this semester, and I chose it because it exemplifies a marriage of ambition and execution that is really rare in journalism. And she's been doing this for years and years and years, and we're very proud to be indirectly associated with her through her relationship with the school. I'm going to introduce her again with the words of one of her mentors at the journalism school, Robin Reisig. I see a pattern here. She said, "I've never taught a more idealistic student, one with greater heart." She and her RW1 classmates, she had them almost in tears when she talked about reporting about Jermaine Ewell, a 17-year-old African-American student who had been beaten into a coma by a racist young white man who saw him talking to a white girl at a party. And she was so moved by that story, Robin, the professor, that she called the New York Times twice to try to get them to write about it. She called. Okay, correcting the record. Real-time fact-checking, that's what we do here in the digital age. And they did write about it. Good for them. But her most recent achievement was a Pulitzer Prize for work she did as part of an Associated Press team for a story based on an investigation of the international fishing industry, and particularly indentured slaves who were working on boats whose product eventually became food that reached American markets, both for human consumption and as pet food. And whoever has my job sits on the Pulitzer board, and we don't talk about our deliberations, but I feel compelled to say, as they were going into the room to discuss the finalists in this case, one of my colleagues turned to me and said, "This is not going to last long. They freed slaves." So, and in fact, they worked with the International Organization for Migration before and as the story was published to make sure that the men they wrote about were in fact released from their bondage. It wasn't just journalism that was thrown out into the ocean. It was a full commitment to the outcomes, and it was successful. So we take great pride in honoring Robin with one of this year's Alumni Awards. Please come up.
Thank you. I can't tell you how honored I am and how happy I am to be here. I think my speech will last a little less than 3 minutes. Mostly I just want to thank everybody. A lot of students who come to Columbia are mid-level journalists or have had quite a bit of experience. I came with very little experience, and the things I learned here really launched me into the world. And I think I was really lucky to go out with the ideals that Columbia gave to me. And to have a teacher like Robin who really saw some of the things that I cared about, and where other people may have said, in fact, one did, "You're never going to graduate. You can't write it all." She said, "But this is an amazingly reported story." And she worked with me, and other teachers worked with me to develop those skills that really prepared me and allowed me to go after the things that I cared about. I think one of the things that, when you are a journalist, one of the things that is the most frustrating sometimes is the stories that you care about and you want the world to care about, and the impact you have really seems to be minute, like a pebble in a bucket. And maybe if you are perseverant, you can throw 50 pebbles in that bucket, but you don't really see a change. Sometimes in the course of your lifetime, sometimes ever. Or the change is, like discussions about bills or laws are being discussed at the UN or in highest levels of government, but you still feel like the people that you care about and that you're reporting about are in the same situation, and their kids will be in the same situation. So when you talk about ambition and execution, I think my entire career has been pretty much ambition, and the thing that made the fish story different was pieces came together and there was the ability to see execution immediately on a large scale. But really, just since I have a little bit of a platform here, I'll say people looked at that fish story, and to them what was important was that men were freed, and how did, freeing slaves in the modern time. That was never the point of the story for us. The point was that there are tens of thousands of men on boats out there still catching fish that still ends up on our dinner table, and that's just one industry. You can look at textile industry, many different industries. Everything that we touch in this global economy may have been produced by people who are still today entrapped in a situation that they might never get out of. So just in this one area, of course, investigative journalism, it's so important now more than ever, but just in this one area, I think any one of us could pick one industry and focus on it for the rest of our lives, and hope for change.
So one more award, and this is a new one for us this year. One we'll keep moving, called the First Decade Award, to recognize an outstanding alum the first 10 years of their professional life. And this one is easy and personal for me because the winner is a friend and close colleague, Basharat Peer. Basharat is now at the New York Times in their opinion sections, but he's been active as a writer and journalist and reporter. His work's been in the New Yorker from Mecca. He's written a book I want to say a word about. He has written for virtually every magazine that covers the world outside the United States in depth and with seriousness. But his story is located partly in Kashmir, where his family is from, and where he and I traveled together one glorious reporting trip for the New Yorker. And his family still has a home in Srinagar, and one of the things we did on that trip was to go out to the line of control, near the line of control, and look at an impromptu graveyard that had been created for unidentified young men who'd been shot in the conflict trying to cross the border. And there was a keeper of the graveyard who tried to keep lists of the victims' effects so that when their families came looking for missing young men, they might have a chance of connecting with some of the remains that this gravekeeper was inventorying. And then one of the least likely but most thrilling accomplishments in Basharat's young career is a film that I don't know how many of you might have seen it, but I just urge you to see it, which is a Bollywood adaptation of Hamlet that is quite serious, quite serious. It has a smashing number in the third act, second half. What's the English title if they go on Netflix or Amazon? Hamlet? Hyder, yeah, sorry. So Hyder, it's anyway, it basically sets Hamlet in the low-grade, middle-grade Civil War of Kashmir in the 1990s, and you'll recognize the graveyard scene. That's all. Anyway, and it's a fantastic work of art. But the most important of Basharat's many accomplishments in the first 10 years of his career is a book he wrote about coming of age in Kashmir called Curfewed Nights. It's just for someone who happened to be assigned to that war and traveled around in it for a while. When I encountered that book, I thought, wow, this is the first authentic voice of middle-class Kashmir and its trials in the post-independence era, but especially after 1989, pressured by Islamist militancy funded from across the border in Pakistan, pressured by misrule by the Indian government, by all kinds of bigotry and misgovernment. And it's a voice like you would find if you wanted a sense of what the Palestinian struggle is about or the Kurdish struggle is about, without cant, without ideology, without politics, really, just journalism and experience. I'm just going to conclude by reading a paragraph from it. Srinagar is a medieval city dying of a modern war. It is empty streets, locked shops, angry soldiers, boys with stones. It's several thousand military bunkers, 4 golf courses, and 3 half-decent bookshops. It is wily politicians repeating their lies about war and peace to television cameras and small crowds gathered by the promise of an elusive job or a daily fee of a few hundred rupees. It is stopping on sidewalks and at traffic lights when the convoys of rulers and their patrons in armored cars secured by machine guns rumble on broken roads. It is staring back or looking away, resigned. Srinagar is never winning and never being defeated. Congratulations, Basharat. Please come up.
Thank you. I mean, one of the things that Steve did not say, and that's something over the years I've been thinking about the school and the university. As someone who did not even know that Columbia University existed before I bumped into Steve Call, I was working at a very small investigative magazine in New Delhi. We had no budgets. Most people made like $500 or $600. You can live on that. when you're a young reporter. And a friend called and said, Steve Call is in town and he wants to meet you. And you're like, sure. So I went to this hotel where Steve was staying, and I met him. And he was interested. He was writing his first big piece for The New Yorker. He had just moved from the Washington Post. This is 2005. And he is working on a story. He wanted to meet a character I had written about. We went, we saw him. End of the story, and then he looks at me saying, so what are you trying to do? I said, I'm trying to write this book about this war in Kashmir. He's one of the few Americans who knows about that. So I just said, you know, Kashmir, you reported it for the Post. He's like, you should apply to Columbia. And I called my father. He said, there's a lot of drugs there, don't go there. Nobody from my parts had heard of Columbia. And he wrote me a letter. He was always extremely generous. And one day, there's this envelope that arrives with a yellow paper signed by Nicholas Lemon, the dean of the journalism school, offering me a full fellowship to come and study here. It was a miracle, because there was no way someone like me could afford to come to America to study at an Ivy League university. And I'm grateful both for that opportunity and for the training and for the support along the way. And that's what I've learned here, apart from, you know, the techniques of journalism, was the generosity that I saw in Steve, I saw in Nick, who are not just teachers, but also friends. And that's the torch one wants to pass on, so that one is able to, now as an editor at the Times, the only way I can repay is that if I hear of some bright kid in a corner in Jalalabad, I call him and say, I want the piece from you, not from the DC think tank guy. Thank you.
We've come to the end of our Alumni Awards presentations, and I want to thank you all for being here today. Our little staff planned this weekend as a showcase of the immense talent that this school produces every single day and every single year. And I hope you see that in all the panel discussions here at every single table. I came to the journalism school 2 years ago as the alumni director after I was a graduate of 1980. A million years ago, as I tell current students, after being a reporter and editor for many years, and I am always humbled every day to learn about other people who are doing great things who are also graduates of this wonderful school. I want to leave you with this, that you show your support for the school every day, your loyalty in many ways, by coming to speak at panels, by coming to give your time to talk to young students, to mentor young people, by giving your time here, by giving to the scholarship funds. And I want to recognize a few people, a few alumni. During the month of April, we have a 2-for-1 scholarship fund going on, and that's due to $100,000 that was made available by several amazing alumni, including Trout and Jean Gleason from the class of '73. Can you tell my aging eyes are having trouble? Darren McDermott from the class of '92, and I believe Darren is in the audience. There he is. Dominic Ben-Sivenga from the class of '87, who also, I think also is in the audience. Catherine Field-Stephen from the class of '77, who is also here. And lastly, to anonymous donors. But I want to thank you for all of the ways that you support the school, all of the ways that you help our students. All of this money goes to scholarships. So thank you for being here today. Thank you for the pride that you show in the school. And thank you for our wonderful alumni winners and our wonderful staff. So have a wonderful afternoon. There's more programming going on today. Thank you.